And in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, this is, you might be onto something here. This was like distributed energy storage. It's fast charging, it democratizes adoption. It really creates a solution for people who are completely excluded from the solutions that are really out there now. Like, okay, yeah, sure. And so when it came time to rank, the sort of teams you want to work on, I, of course, ranked ElectricFish as number one on my list.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Clean Techies, the podcast. It is good to be back. We are on episode 27. Had a nice little break over Christmas. It was really refreshing to not only take a break from the podcast, but it took a nice long break from work as well. I was off for about 2 weeks. Now I'm just chilling in Portugal for a month and working remotely thanks to my boss being pretty flexible. But really excited to bring this next episode to you. This is part one of a part two series. So I'm just going to kind of get right into it. In this episode, I had the opportunity to interview Fola and Anurag, both founders of this company called ElectricFish. They recently were recognized by Forbes for the 30 under 30 list for 2022 under the energy sector. Very interesting story, both of them. And what they're doing essentially is they're building a startup in the EV charging and energy storage space that is really focused on helping underserved communities who typically do not get access to these types of things. You think about EV charging, and oftentimes most people think of, the rich, the more affluent people being able to have access to these things, people who own homes, right? And there's a lot of people who do not have access to these things just because it's simply been overlooked. So what they're doing, I think, is extremely inspiring. This conversation was very interesting. This first part today focuses largely on their story and how they got to where they are. And then the episode next week will focus a lot more on the technology. But really hope you enjoy this episode. Before we do get into it, I do also want to make mention to our sponsors, NextWave partners. As always, NextWave is helping us make this possible. NextWave are experts in the talent acquisition and recruitment space across ClimateTech, renewables, and ESG globally. So if your team is growing or you are looking to make a career change, please do reach out to them at next-wavepartners.com. You can also reach out to one of their consultants directly via the LinkedIn page, which is linked in the description. So with that, let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today?
I am doing very well, and you?
Very good. I'm very excited for this. Extremely happy to have you both on. I guess first of all, before we get started, congratulations to both of you on Forbes 30 under 30. What a really amazing accomplishment. And I think from our initial conversation a couple weeks ago, two very, very well-deserving people to receive that. So I guess let's get started with kind of basic introductions. I wanted this will be obviously a two episode series here, so we can take a little bit of time to just hear from both of you individually on your stories. Kind of, I think let's focus on how you ended up in climate tech in general, and what kind of what the turning point was at some point where you realized that you wanted to dedicate your career to this.
Okay, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Exactly what time is difficult to pinpoint over our whole career journey. Started with being more interested in tech itself, like engineering, but the whole goal to move, over time, develop this insight that whatever process you can use should be for basically letting us live more on this planet because we are destroying it at a very fast speed. And I think I found my niche in batteries, which is the thing which we need to move towards renewable energy. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. Over time, we figured out what should be the mission, and I actually do have a path to do it. And I found people like Fola to work with me. Why don't you go next, Fola?
Yeah, it's been an exciting journey working with AK so far, a year and a half and counting. But for me, I don't know that there was one particular moment. It was continuous. I guess kind of built up to it. I studied back in Nigeria for undergrad, and it's an oil and gas rich country, and I was studying chemical engineering with some expectation of working in the oil industry because it's a large employer of labor over there. And somehow, thought natural gas kind of is the future, but was aware of climate change and thinking perhaps there's a way to use gas more sustainably. I had the opportunity to, work offshore for an internship during undergrad, and just seeing the stack go continuously flaring gas was just like, oh gosh, that looks scary. That does not look good. And figured, okay, I want to try to figure out a way to help, the country realize its development goals, using resources it has, but in a sustainable way. That kind of led me down the path of like figuring out what are all the technology options out there. I feel like I want to go to grad school and study more, and just, I guess, transition more into energy systems and studying that. And it was during the grad school journey that I met AK. So I don't know, kind of built into it.
Interesting. So maybe, could you talk to us a little bit more about maybe the background and kind of the journey that led you to, obviously you said you were interested in technology initially, but then came to realize that battery systems were a kind of a good niche for you to get into. I'd be keen to kind of follow the thought process, because I think there's a lot of people going through this journey right now, and they'd probably be keen to hear that as well.
All right. So organically, I started my career in undergrad working for a racing team. I was the president of the club in the final year. We used to build off-road racing cars to, it's called Baja. I think some people know about it. You build off-road student competition, building off-road cars to race them. And my division was powertrain. So basically designing the whole transmission system. That's what I worked on for first braking, then powertrain. And powertrain, when I finished college and started working for a company in India, it was a Volvo subsidiary, Aisha Motors. I was in the transmission division, mostly working towards just automating stuff like AMTs versus manual transmission. And that is when they started building the first electric truck. And I was like most of the franchise division, so I got into actually contribute to it, even if it was a third-party development. And that is where I guess I was going to go to graduate school anyways. I guess that was the plan. And I got into just understanding what is the most difficult piece in electric propulsion, right? Motors have reached pretty much a lot of development levels. Tesla is doing still some more work, cutting 0.3% or something. But I guess the batteries was an upcoming figure, and they're difficult, right? That's most interesting thing about batteries. They're basically a block box. You put them in, put some chemicals in, and I just let them. You can't directly measure the state of the battery. You just have to predict it according to different current and temperature conditions, right? And faster there's something called Picard's law. I guess it's too technical. But like the faster you discharge a battery, lesser capacity does it have, right? You wanna discharge battery slower, so they end up with having large capacity. Lithium-ion batteries are way better, but still. It's just the complexity interested me to excited me to go to pursue that in my master's, and I got into mathematical modeling. How do you predict all the electrochemical behaviors? And the journey was fun. I guess it's been a long journey. When you guys get bored, let me know. I can switch track.
No, I think this is interesting. I think that this is not uncommon of people to have this kind of longer experience. So you can feel free to continue. I appreciate the technical things. I like to learn.
Okay. All right. So got into electrochemical modeling, some mathematical definitions. What I did was to basically predict aging of batteries, so made the mathematical models more complex, adding more equations to them. So I started working for BMW just after that. It was such a lucky break. They literally it was an internship, and they told me that we are looking for doing something exactly what you're doing at your master's. I basically had to pursue exact thing here for BMW electric cars, right? Because the way they used to predict battery models or battery states were by equivalent circuit models. So you just take the data, fit the data into a capacitor and a resistor, put in parallel, and you just tune the parameters. But you can use physical equations to actually predict that, right? Differential equations. But it's difficult to solve those differential equations on a computer, on a automobile, because it's much lesser computationally capable. Because you want to save energy. The more you burn compute, the more energy you waste. So yeah, that was my goal at BMW. I worked on that, and I ended up using quantum computing for trying to predict battery variables. That was the most amazing thing ever. I continued my internship by doing that. But yeah, this like much feels, this technology was just exciting. And that is when I actually went to San Francisco. I had this idea about, we have fast charging is already there, was the insight which I built. And ended up just meeting everybody, all my co-founders, to start this idea, which we'll talk more about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good. That's a good place to segue. So I wanted to talk about then kind of the process and how you guys ended up connecting in Stanford, and maybe a little bit around the timing, right, pieces. Like for you, AK, obviously having the technology and the idea, right? At what point did you decide, hey, like I really need to make this a real business? And then did you have like certain gaps or anything that you were like, hey, I really need to find a co-founder with this type of experience? Maybe talk about how Stanford was involved in that. I'm just curious because I think that this is a common theme among a lot of climate tech startups, is where two people with kind of different experiences are going to combine to make a really powerful team.
AK, you should start off. I think it starts way before me. So yeah, tell the story.
Like starting, I pitched this company at a San Francisco hackathon, right? It was a 3-day business competition when you make a business model in 48 hours. It was organized by a friend, Daniel Criazore, and he invited me to show up. So I showed up at the event. Actually ended up making a team. We won the champion competition. We were first. So the team stuck together. Had to do a lot of work first 2-3 months to convince everybody what they like have thought, right? It was vetted, the business model which I had come up with, right? It was vetted through customer discovery interviews and stuff. And then the best way to build a company is just be in part of incubators, right? So got into the Stanford's Ignite incubator. I had actually applied the last session as well with the same idea, and it still got in. So the next time I applied, I could not go because I was moving to Tennessee, Oak National Lab, another story. Because I just got in first time, but I didn't go. I couldn't make it. So next time I said that I have got a team now. It's the same idea. It's more serious. Let's get in. So yeah, I got admit again, and then just like there's it's a process. It's a 1-month program. Pretty cool. If you do all the homework. If you don't do the homework, then.
I really do know the homework.
Yeah, so that is where I jumped into like there were different stages. In the second stage, you have to get like into video call with like whoever is interested to work in your like project. There's a voting, and you choose 10 companies. And that is when I met Fola, right? She was the first one to show up in the video zone.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, you can start from here, Fola. What do you find out?
Of course.
Yeah.
And so my work has always been kind of interdisciplinary. I'm interested in how does the technology work? How do you build the models? How do you put the thing on ground? But also, how do we get this to be economically feasible? What kind of policies do we need to get it to, really be successful? And also, how do you build a business around it? But I figured I didn't know too much about building a business around it part. And I was looking for a good opportunity to fill that gap. I'd wanted to do Ignite for a really long time, but then I decided, you know what? I don't think I want to do an internship this summer. This is the perfect summer. I'm going to do this. And I applied. Unfortunately, it went remote because of the pandemic. It turned out to still be a really great program. And so they do this thing where they invite you to submit a venture idea. And I was like, as cool as it would be to, come up with something, I just can't think of anything. And I also like, I'm dying under research and classes. I don't have the time for this. But you can also, just towards the start, take a look at all the ideas submitted and choose a team to work on. And so I went through all of the ideas and I'm like, they're fantastic, but I don't really know anything about ed tech. And I kind of don't really want to work on like a sensor for a cell in the body. It's cool, but I don't know how useful that will be. Then I saw ElectricFish and it was like energy storage coupled with fast charging. I'm like, that's in the energy space. I know a little bit about that. That sounds cool. Okay, let's see what this is about. And I go in, and that's when I meet AK. And you've heard him talk about batteries, and he just, went in on the details. And in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, this is you might be onto something here. This was like distributed energy storage. It's fast charging. It democratizes adoption. It really creates a solution for people who are completely excluded from the solutions that are really out there now. Like, okay, yeah, sure. And so when it came time to rank, the sort of teams you want to work on, I, of course, ranked ElectricFish as number one on my list. And I was assigned to the team, and it was incredible. It was a great few weeks where we really got to simulate the startup environment and really build on the idea and the model, how to, scale, how to even take, the product public and get out there. So those were like really incredible decisions. And I thought, even there, we had a really good working relationship, especially considering it was remote again. And I think one of the first times I realized there was a great synergy there was considering the tech. And I think we were deciding on, should we go with gas stations or should we go with like, grocery stores and stuff? And, fantastic team conversations filling in, people giving ideas, but it was nice to hear different people's perspectives on how to do things. And AK was like, do you want to, meet the team? I was like, sure, yeah, I want to meet the team. I've heard you talk about Vince and Elio every day for a month. And I hopped on a call with Vince and Elio, right? And it was just this, I talked to them, heard their stories. They are so impressive, so fantastic, shared ideology and philosophy. And it was just this focus on really building an impactful product, something that would change the game and would really create access for billions of people and building out this reliable energy system that would be all inclusive. And so I was like, okay, this is great. I don't know how this is going to work with my PhD. I don't even know how this is going to work with the immigration stuff. I don't know anything about startups, but this is fantastic. Let's jump right off this cliff. So that I guess was how I got in on the ElectricFish family. And that was, I think, August of last year, July, August of last year. It's been fun since.
Very good. That's quite the exciting story. I think it's very, I guess, just interesting and great to see that there is, this incubator process, right, that has brought you guys together to do this. I'm assuming there's many other programs out there doing similar things. So I'd be keen to now move on to the product itself. So a couple of things that it'd be if you're able to kind of describe to us the general landscape of what the electric vehicle charging side of things looks like, and then how your product is kind of fitting into this or maybe improving it. And I'd also like to have you guys talk a little bit about the how you mentioned making sure there's access for everybody, right, to have access to this technology. So if you could just give us the groundwork and then into your technology would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
I can start off, Fola.
Yeah, go right ahead.
The charging piece about the behavioral virus, and then Fola obviously can talk about access piece because she does it best. My point about fixing EV charging experiences, like you just need to blend with how the consumers use gasoline cars right now. Technology is almost there. People used to talk about cost of cars, but that's almost at parity as well. Um, Generally, as we move towards early adopters to early majority, there's this big chasm of behavioral barriers. Currently, EV charging solutions, even if Electrify America and others, can charge at 350 kilowatts, and that's the charging rate which is really required to move. The current point is we perceive gasoline vehicles to charge from 0 to 100, but electric cars don't want to charge 0 to 100. They're not charged between 20 to 80% for the longevity of the battery, and they charge fastest during that time. So filling up the tank should not be the goal, and we should not just promote behaviors in which people leaving their cars there for a longer time in specific urban city environments. Intercity is different. Uh, our goal, our product itself tries to eliminate this barrier by having the fast charging, which is there in the market, but capping it to just 10 minutes and deploying at a place where people only go for 5 to 7 minutes, like gas station stops average, right? Gas stations, convenience stores, even the quick stop places, curbside pickup places at Lowe's, maybe. We target those locations, put our box there. It's a big box. It takes a parking spot right now. We're working on making it smaller as we go forward. 350 kilowatt hour capacity, good enough to give around 35 cars with 10-minute charging sessions. That's how we make sure that people stop, go, they get that top of range, 50 to 170 miles, depending upon which car you drive, right, in 10 minutes of charging. And leave the charger alone for the next person who wants to use it, because if you just leave it there, it's not accessible for other people. That's only one piece of the behavioral experience, and a little bit of a product like fastest charging, 10-minute charging session, 350 kilowatt battery, works with a 40 kilowatt electricity connection, right? You can hook it up at a gas station right now with the hub which they have. And I guess the grid backup aspect of it, Fola, you can jump on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like Anurag mentioned, 40 kilowatt grid connection, and we're thinking of, bridging that up to 100 with software. But really the idea and the decision to go with, let's do maybe gas stations and convenience stores, was building in ubiquity into our deployment strategy. So when AK talked about this, and we're thinking, oh gosh, there's so many people right now who don't have access to home charging. When you look at the statistics of folks who are able to own their own homes, especially in a younger demographic who tend to be the earlier adopters, then you start to see this gap. And then when you start to deep dive based on, race, Black, Latinx communities, and discrepancies there, it shows there's a lot of people who are being left behind in the clean energy transition. And even the current adopters suffer a lot of range anxiety, right? Here in the Bay Area, folks like to travel up to Tahoe almost every weekend in the winter to go skiing. And you find a lot of folks who have electric vehicles and also have a gasoline vehicle leave their electric vehicles behind and take the gas car off, because they don't know if they're going to be able to find charging when you don't want to push a car down the mountain. It's not ideal. So it's like, how do we create this large scale access? And then when we dug into the numbers for, okay, we're also trying to provide reliability. Let's look at historical public safety power shutoff data. What communities get shut off first? Who does it disproportionately impact? How can we build out electricity infrastructure for the future that meets the cost, concern, but also the reliability concern and the equity concern? It's a no-brainer to make that a distributed resource. And then the idea just seemed to fit or tick many boxes simultaneously. You want something that is able to overcome the barrier to fast charging, because you can technically install fast charging right now, but there's the challenge of the pressure it puts on the distribution network. And then again, such a pressure is that challenge is going to cause grid instability, or at least a challenge with stabilizing the grid, quality of power issues, and then you take a look at who is that going to disproportionately impact. So that's also a problem. And there's also the low asset utilization problem. You have a charger there and it's utilized, what, 10% of the day, maybe less, maybe 17 on average. And that's also a problem from the perspective of the investor or the owner. And so you want something that you can ensure folks are really going to use, or at least you're going to recoup your investment on. You also want something that is able to, if possible, help your sustainability goals, right? We have so many renewables going on the grid right now. And these resources, especially solar, is very variable. When in those hours of the day when the sun starts to set, also coincides with hours of the day where everyone gets home, turns on their heating, their AC, the oven, the television and all that. And the peak load just gets even peakier. And we're trying to electrify everything, electrify heating, electrify transportation. Those peak loads are going to get even peakier. How do we balance this situation, right? How do we ensure reliability? How do we convince people to adopt EVs? How do we fit the lifestyle of the person who's not wealthy, of the average person who doesn't have time wealth to go wait around at a grocery store for an hour or two to get that accessible charging? The person who doesn't have access to workplace charging, person who doesn't have street parking or garage, or own their own home. How do we make sure that we are providing a solution that serves all these people? How do we even make sure we have a solution that serves the person who does have all those things, but somehow finds themselves, is this day you probably maybe aren't able to get home or forgot to plug your car in, you have this important long drive to make, and now you're stuck in the middle of nowhere with a low charge. How do you solve those emergency type situations? Of course, we need an entire suite of charging options, but there's that gap for the accessible public fast charging that currently isn't being met, that can and probably will be the game changer in ensuring widespread adoption. And so this was the challenge that we're like, okay, we seem to have an idea that ticks all these boxes. Let's go with it. And on the energy storage part, the beauty of that is the market is evolving towards a place where the value really that energy storage, especially battery energy storage, provides is being compensated and should be compensated. And so if we're not earning, if we don't have any cars coming through, we can still use the battery to provide valuable grid services, provide grid balancing, provide backup power, peak shaving, all of these critical services that both the utility or the grid operator or the customer needs. And so we immediately have this really beautiful model that allows us to utilize the energy storage asset and the entire module to the fullest. And so I think it's a beautiful, idea Anurag brought forward, and the team has done such a great job. We've had so many people contribute perspectives, ideas that has reshaped and will continue to shape how we think about the product. But at the foundation of it is, how are we advancing our clean energy goals? How are we making sure we're actually solving the problem we want to and not contributing to it in any way? How are we making sure we're not creating feedback sort of issues? And how are we focusing on equity every step of the way in our solution, in the design of the product, in our model, in the financing options that we offer? How do we make sure we stick to our core values? So I guess that's how we keep thinking about the produut. And that's what
this is interesting. So could you there's a lot of things, I think you guys have dropped a lot of knowledge here. I'm trying to make sure we get to unpack a little bit of it. Let's focus maybe on initially when you guys are targeting where to potentially pitch this product to, right? Who are you going to sell to? I'd be curious to know the thought process there to ensure that, you're making it equitable, that it's in the right locations, that it's helping the right people. Could you walk us through that process?
If you want to chat about core score, yeah.
Core score. Yeah, so core score is a tool which we built a year before, which uses specific data sets. First, start with a base data set of hosting capacity of the grid. Hosting capacity is a technical term, which means like what is the flexibility of the grid to absorb generation and providing power, right? Sort of a metric of that. And we use that as a base data set, which California utilities have open source access to, and use other parameters of where exactly AV shows are going to show up, like using traffic to traffic data, peak to peak data, and in-house probability of outage based on climate data, and socioeconomic indicators on which kind of communities live where. And we just assign weights to them to figure out what are the hotspots where we have to deploy these stations. And the goal is to be a service provider. We lease these units to gas station owners. It's a mix, 70-30%, let's say 70% leased out. Unless in the first year nobody's gonna just buy upfront units without it's proven up other business model. So we lease them out. The goal is to put 30 in the next year at a circle of gas stations. Either Southern California or Northern California, the goal is to deploy up to 20 of these stations. We lease them out, so we need to raise debt as a company to fund these units, basically a 5-year loan. And pays off in 3 years, for us, the ROI of each units. Basically serve capacity to the grid, and when the grid is weak, it makes more financial sense. And disadvantaged communities make financial sense because there's certain incentives available only for those regions to deploy energy storage. So just a mix of all that, we try to prioritize and deploy these. Just want to make communities robust. We haven't talked about the backup aspect of it. It's slightly away. It's difficult to paint a vision, but we will come to that. Am I missing something about deployments?
I think you covered most of it. It's we really try to do it intelligently. We've had VCs and stuff tell us, you're not a charity, but it makes sense. Like I said, ticking all those boxes. We go take a look at the grid. Where is it most vulnerable? What is the hosting capacity here? Where can we provide value? Who lives here? Who are we serving, or will we be serving? What is their traffic flow? What is their vehicle ownership data like? And how can we scale according to that? What is historical public safety power shut off in this area? Sort of getting a sense for, this is where we can provide valuable good services. This is where we need, or EV charging demand is needed. This is how we co-optimize those two things, and to site our products in a way that's smart, that's intelligent. And of course, the model keeps readjusting the weights upon which it's built, so that we keep improving our ability to predict where we can provide value.
Got it. That makes sense. So one thing I'm curious about too is the install process with these, right? So when you guys select a place that kind of intersects at these different areas, right? The Venn diagram essentially of the different areas you're looking to serve. What does the process look like for connecting? I know you mentioned that it sounds like there's no upgrade costs required because we're looking at the same energy flowage. So could you talk about that process and what it looks like for the gas station, for example, leasing this equipment?
So we are just building our next 20. The goal is to deploy in December 2022. That's how much far we out for our first deployments. Currently, because for us to just start serving charging demand, it's in terms of electrical utility is very simple. You just hook up to the power service which is available. Trying to get a service that size, it's just even 2 days for Northern California standards. But yeah, we do have to provide backup power as well, which is technically a infamous term called net metering, right? Because basically, if you have more solar and you're generating more solar when the grid already has solar, you want to put the energy back, then you basically have to pay utility grid for it. Not everywhere, like that's how it started. But we need to feed back, but we will feed back during good times, right? Because we have that buffer, we store energy when it's surplus and can put it back when it's stressed, right? So it generates revenue, but it's just the permitting process for a net metering connection is slightly long, 2 months right now, right? Literally, there's not directly a specialized application exists. I think PG&E put battery-based permit application, like net metering battery-based, but it's just like it's not a standardized process right now. Solar is, but for batteries, it's pretty new. That's what we are trying to do here. So that process takes like 2 months. It's difficult to get without a solar. We don't have solar. Yeah, apparently have to have solar tied to it. So that's what could slow down the deployment. But to get the EV charging live is pretty simple, right? You just hook up with the connection, you start serving sessions, serve 10 minutes so that you don't run out of juice, right? And it's very central to the charger being available. I'm repeating myself here, but yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any?
Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to add to that, so like AK mentioned, the net metering program was originally meant to help accelerate solar deployment, but it was expanded to include sort of standalone energy storage, but it's taken a while to catch up to like, figuring out how to streamline the permitting process and timelines around that. And it is, it's they need to come do a number of site inspections just to make sure, because you're sending power back to the grid. I think in the next few months, that process is going to be streamlined. They do have sort of stuff in the pipeline working towards cutting down those interconnection times, because they are really trying to accelerate deployments really quickly. But just to reiterate, we are sort of plug and play, no trenching required. Drop the product there, connect to, all you need is kind of like a pole, right? Anurag, if I'm not mistaken, with the meter connected. And so it's a really fast process. Comparatively, sort of status quo, fast charging, permitting installation takes upwards of a year. So it's really cutting down those permitting times. And we anticipate we're going to be able to shorten it significantly, even to less than a month in a few months.
Interesting. That'll be exciting. I think that we'll get into that in a little bit. The regulatory processes. I think that's a very interesting example we'll be able to pull on. Maybe one final thing is: are there any data points yet on, say for example, we're talking about gas stations a lot, that implement or install a few electric chargers? Do they have any? Is there any data that talks about the increase of business or traffic that they might have to that site? Again, I'm assuming California is maybe a bit more advanced than Wisconsin, for example.
I mean, that's a really fantastic question. I wouldn't say that there's a direct data set that would show that, because this is a new model. Mm-hmm. But one would, we extrapolate, right? There's progressively lower and lower margins that these businesses are facing just because of the electrification of light duty transportation. And they get the majority of their margins from sort of folks who come in, stop by to buy something while filling their tanks. And even from the sale, the kickbacks they get on the sale of actual fuel. And so it's a no-brainer that as we deploy EV or adopt electric vehicles more, those margins are dropping. 70% of gas stations in the US are individually owned. Or at least, and it's not different in California. And when one looks at that, most of them are small businesses, sort of hearts of the community. There are jobs at stake, and they're currently being disrupted. And the chargers, sort of vehicle chargers going out right now, are not going to those spaces. They're not being owned in any way or in any way that compensates these small businesses for value being lost. And so what we're trying to do is, how do we augment their income and give them a footing in sort of the clean energy future that we're all building out?
That's very interesting. I think that's great to hear, because honestly, that's a lot of the people like I grew up around when we first talked, I told you guys about my story, and a lot of people just feel that the jobs are being taken away. So I think that that's interesting that you're trying to, and I think with the financing model, it sounds like you're also making it very possible for small business owners to actually be able to capture that value rather than just it being, going off their books entirely. So I think maybe just a couple more questions here on the product side. During this process so far, what have been like the biggest challenges that you have run into, whether that be on customer side, technology, et cetera, just anything that really stood out to you as a big challenge?
I'll let you go first, AK.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Was pondering over it. Like towards product development, if I talk about we're building something cutting edge, 350 kilowatt. It's a big battery sitting inside urban environment. You have to make sure it's safe. We still don't know like a best way to how to quench a battery fire. If a car is burning, you just throw water at it, keep throwing water at it. There's no way to quench fire. So basically the best way to let it burn, that's what we are learning towards product development process, how to make safe units. We are a startup building such a high voltage device. It's you need some technical resources as well. I guess towards product development, we have way to go, and that's why we are raising our seed Jan to March. Today I shipped our unit. Like I'm actually driving to LA tonight because our deployment will be live in Christmas in Los Angeles, right? So it's fun times. We built this. There's going to be a Christmas video coming out. This podcast is coming in January, so it should be out by then. That's one of the product development challenges. When I look forward, I think about finance. The big number, right? 16 terawatt hours of energy storage is required all across the country. I don't know by when, right? Everybody tries to either push it or accelerate it, depending upon the environment. If you just translate sheer all capacity to our numbers, it will be 42 million, right? Obviously, you don't need just our units. There'll be multiple form of storage. But even if you build 2%, a million of these units need to be built. We have to figure out how exactly we'll get capital for deploying all this, how to figure out how many leads are leased, how many are sold. So that's looking forward. We have to figure this out. Follow.
Yeah, I think you've asked a very, very interesting question. I think about three things right now. One of them is in terms of debt financing, making that work. The other is, I would say, is in terms of, I guess, cutting down on the cost per unit or increasing or optimizing significantly our utilization and revenue streams. I will talk a little bit about the second first, which is right now there are incentives, regulatory incentives that we get, kind of like the LCFS, the SGIP incentive that augments our revenue streams. But those are being phased out. They're not going to be there forever. And so we need to really be able to cut down on, as we scale, of course, economies of scale are going to play in, but we need to be able to cut down on our, even more on our production cost per unit. And another thing is being able to capture as much of the value stream from the energy storage services that we provide as possible. And the market has a long way to go to catch up as well, because there is just so much value, so many services that the unit is capable of providing that are currently not being compensated. Of course, regulators have realized this and we're working towards it, but we all know how sometimes slow the regulatory process can be. And then when it comes to capitalizing on what we have, it's how do we do this intelligently with data? It's in order to do things intelligently, it's expensive. You need sort of a lot of automation, but at the same time, it's kind of like this chicken and egg problem. And there's not a lot of data out there on the specifics of what we're doing. And it's going to take time to learn and get those insights, build those analytics, and reshape and adapt to the market. And so it's this, I guess it's our job to stress out about how are we going to get there? How are we going to do it? How are we going to do it right? Well, we will, because we're learning and have been learning so far. In terms of debt financing, I guess it's really linked to the first part. But we do need to be able to access debt to scale really quickly, and also to be able to, design models that are accessible to our customers. And it's not just the accessing debt, it's accessing cheap debt, or at least not very high interest rate debt. And we need to demonstrate quite a bit of these things first. And then I think the third thing I'll talk about, I guess I kind of already mentioned, is how regulators and the market have quite a bit of catching up to do. It is a rather young market, so everyone's kind of figuring things out at the same time. And it's great because we all sort of have the capacity to shape it into what it needs to be, which is why it's also important to have a diversity of voices in the space. But then it's how are we making sure that we're compensating value that the system is getting to make sure that we're encouraging creative business models like ours to be successful.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite interesting. I think the business model aspect has been a very key factor from what I've seen with most of the companies that tend to do very well. So I think that's very interesting. I think if there's anything else you wanted to add on the product, otherwise I think this is a good spot to take a quick break and then we can come back for the other things, unless you have anything else to add.
I think I'm all good.
Okay, all right. We'll take a short break and then we'll be right back.
Okay, see you soon.
Hope you guys enjoyed this first part of this conversation with Fola and Anurag. Do come back next week for the rest of the conversation. As always, it'll be coming on Thursday. In the meantime, if you are looking to get involved and stay more engaged, please consider subscribing wherever you are listening to your podcasts, especially if you're listening on Apple. We would love for you to give us a review. It really helps for us to gain and grow the reach of this, helping to educate more people. Along that lines, we also please ask that you share this with somebody who might find it interesting. Maybe there's somebody who's been kind of skeptical of the space, and this could help push them over the edge and help them to realize kind of the economic benefits to doing this. You can also check out and learn more about ElectricFish going to their website. Again, link in the description. You can support the show. You might consider joining our Slack channel if you're looking to get involved and have a little bit more direct discussion with other professionals in the space, or ask me any questions. And then, of course, you can sign up for the newsletter, which, by the way, right now we are doing a special 30-day sustainability challenge. So we're sending out a daily newsletter with just a short tip on a little bit, a way to live a little bit more sustainably. So I'm doing that with the help of Randy. So really appreciate her efforts there, but it's a very interesting thing that you can do to help start the new year off right and kind of build this habit of sustainable thinking. So with that, I guess, finally, a big, huge thanks to, again, Next Wave Partners for making this possible. And we will see you next week on CleanTech is the podcast.